Good morning, it's X Winterview, back again with another brief dialogue. My dear friend Annastacey, on his way to work, driving in the old 1.3 litre thing. Lost my words again. This morning's brief dialogue is a little look at the process of reification, solidification, making things appear solid, stable, so forth. This is in some ways another part of the mechanics, you could say, of duality, in line with recent dialogues. So I thought I'd follow the theme a bit further, see what happens. And we have a few minutes before I get to work, so sit back, relax, put your feet up, ask your butler to bring you a cup of warm cocoa, settle down, and have one of your harem fan you with a palm frond as you listen to the infinite wisdom pouring out of X Winterview. Okay. So, the direct experience of this world is, when put under the microscope, you could say, becomes a very different place. We know just from science that if you look deep within material, within the matter of the world, you first notice that the form itself that you thought you were looking at is very different on an atomic level, a molecular level, then a sub-molecular level, etc. We know that, for example, looking at a chair from a distance of 10 feet away, it looks like a chair, but when we zoom in close into the wood grain, it doesn't look like a chair anymore, and then it doesn't even look like wood, and then the atoms, or the elemental structure, we could say, the compounds and all that, looking deeper, they don't even look like that anymore, and deep down we come to space, seemingly come to space. So that's just in the scientific sort of level way of looking at things. The other way we can look at it is as we go through the day, and for example I'm driving to work right now, the scenery is passing me by. It's fleeting in consciousness. It's coming around the corner now as I am. There's a tree and it's passed. Looking into the distance for a second, there's mountains. There are mountains. And now they're gone. My eyes back to the road travelling under the car as I move along. Never solid for a second. Everything in motion, constantly in flux. But the mind doesn't have a problem with it. It's got a story, a narrative in the background. The narrative, something like, I'm driving through the back roads of the countryside on my way to work. And that narrative, that sense of stability and structure, gives a solidity to the appearance somehow. It's as if it's solid and stable, that it's so solid and stable that I don't have to worry about it, which is exactly the point. I don't have to worry. The other interesting thing too is this character, this person that I seem to spend endless hours talking about or refuting its very existence. What is this character that seems to be driving the car right now? Well, in present awareness, let's keep it all real simple, this character is two fists around a steering wheel at the moment. Seemingly. This is all seemingly. It's two hairy, tanned arms attached to these two fists. There's the tops of the knees that are in view, and if I flick the eyes down, I can see my feet. But that's all there. That's all that's known of the physiology, you could say. The idea, of course, is indeed there is a solid body there somewhere, but there's also the feeling of the weight on the seat, the feeling of the curve of the back against the softness of the seat, the feeling of heaviness in the seat, which again makes the story nice and neat and complete. If the story is that there's a body sitting here, then all the evidence, the sensory evidence, supports the belief. And of course, once the evidence supports the belief and the belief is reinforced, the belief seems to be true. Why would I question that? It seems so obvious. It seems beyond doubt. Yet, interestingly, the experience is not of a solid body. That is not the experience. The direct experience is somewhat more fleeting and unstable. That sense of weight shifts gradually, shifts marginally, gently. The view of the hands changes from moment to moment. Sometimes the hand comes to the face to scratch. Sometimes it goes down to the gear stick. Sometimes it rests on the door frame for a moment. And so it changes. That sense of stability and solidity that I presume is my body must be something else. It must be something else because, well, why must it be something else? Let's go to that question. The sense that I exist hasn't changed throughout this entire drive, nay, throughout this entire life. The sense that I exist has never for a second, nanosecond, changed in any way. It hasn't got stronger, it hasn't got lesser, it hasn't been interrupted by anything. Even sleep does not interrupt the sense of existing itself. So that stable presence, you could say, cannot be the body, cannot be this body, because the body, or the experience of the body, is ever changing, ever shifting. Isn't that interesting? Let's go take a little bit of a different angle now. This character, this so-called person, X has this name, X Winterview. The name, the label for this imagined character, again, seems to give it a sense of solidity and stability in the appearance. Yet the name is certainly not always present. The awareness of the name is certainly not ever present. It's only there when I have to tell people my name, or respond to a question, or write it down, and even then it's there in front of me and then gone after that. So the experience of the name, which seems solid, is ever changing. The character itself, the personality, is happening. I didn't choose this personality. I didn't choose the traits of this character. If you want to go scientific for a moment, we could argue that there's a rich and magnificent, you could even say, if you're being a bit poetic, genetic heritage that has come down through the eons of time to create this character. There are experiences in childhood that shaped elements of the personality, experiences in different cultures around the world, different families, different relationships over time that have shaped and moulded the character. There's no sense really that I did any of that. I chose any of that. That is all a functioning or an arising out of something more mysterious. Although I could tell a story about psychodynamic processes, behavioral reinforcements, cultural influences, genetics, blah blah blah, a wonderful story about it all, that's just a way of making sense of something. And those stories could change over time. Science can change. Ideas can change. This personality, looking down on the character, is, even the word personality tries to give a monolithic stability to the person. This person has a personality. Sometimes serious, sometimes joking and childish, probably more childish and joking than serious. Sometimes conscientious, sometimes lazy, sometimes irreverent, sometimes reverent, rarely, I should say, and so on and so on. I could list endlessly the characteristics and tell you where I probably lie on the spectrum of each characteristic. So as we look deep into the persona, into the personality, things emerge, different qualities and characteristics, spectrums of traits emerge that I probably fall somewhere along and probably change. I probably don't sit very long on one thing. And also, if it was a spectrum, for example, then if I looked deeply, I could probably have a subspectrum, and again more deeply another subspectrum. Just like the atom, it all reduces down infinitely. Yet it is given a sense of stability with the labeling, the name, X, all summarized in one name. So the character, even the character and person that it seems to be, is this movement, this constant movement, this flux in the awareness, or in ever-present awareness. And no matter what the character is doing in any given moment, the sense of existence, being, presence, etc. never changes. It's ever-present being, ever-present awakeness. The words are not too important. Ever-present something. Ever-presence. The ever-presence. And the character could have some monumental struggle. There could be a huge loss, maybe a personal loss of relationship, a loss of money perhaps, or calamity, physical health calamity, loss of possessions, loss of status, loss of social standing. All that could happen to the character, which could shape again the personality, warp it or boost it or bolster it, any given number of outcomes, possibly. Always in change, in shifting flux. Yet given a sense of solidity, permanence, by thought, by the mind, by the concept of being this individual. And then the final question or realm, you could say, is the sense of agency, the doer, the authorship. It feels as if I'm driving the car. A sense somehow that this person, this stable, seemingly immutable object, X, is in charge of the car right now. But again, that becomes uncertain when you start to factor in little nuances of the drive. If an animal was to run in front of the car, you could say that the reflexes kicked in and swerved around the animal. There would be no sense that X decided to do that. X might try and claim that he did that. Oh sure, I saw the animal and I swerved. But it was more likely an action of reflex. The driving itself is an act of conditioning. This driver, this ability to drive, has been shaped over many, many hours in the car, over many years of different driving conditions. The body is trained, you could say, to drive cars. There's a mechanistic quality to the way that the driving takes place. The body just knows where to put the hands, how often to check the mirrors, how to judge speed of oncoming cars, or how to imagine there's a car moving up on the outside lane, and to keep that at the back of the mind, not to move in front of it. All sorts of clever little tricks that give a sense that I, in some ways, that I must be doing all that. But really, if I think about it, I don't have the attention to hold all those factors in mind, do I? I can't control all the little nuances of muscle and nerve and physiology required to drive. The body does that. There's no sense at all that I'm telling the body what to do. Really, I mean, the amount of processes that are going on in the body is staggering if you break it all down. But the sense of existing remains. That's the trick right there. The very existence itself that is unbroken makes it seem that I'm here. And the mind appropriates. It sort of takes that sense of existence and extrapolates. It sort of suggests that there is a person there who exists, a single entity who exists. The single entity, if you like, being very cautious with this, the single entity is the totality, the presence itself. The presence is singular. There's not two presences. Not two. So the mind, in the end, takes what are, in effect, hundreds of thousands of, perhaps hundreds of thousands of little mini micro processes that are ongoing continuously, and in some ways blocks them out of present awareness. You don't need to be aware of every single little minuscule process that's going on, and wraps it all up very neatly in a story, in a narrative that uses very few concepts. X is driving the car. X drives the car to work. Just a few words summarizing processes. So, in essence, you could say that the world is process, that everything is process, everything is a verb, you might even say, and that nouns are rare if they exist at all. In fact, I don't even know if we could find a noun. We know that when we break everything down, it sort of dissolves into nothingness. So the nouns of the world are only apparent. And if there is anything, it could be a verb. Could be a verb. Process, a happening, an apparent happening. And it's apparent because we're never sure what's going on. We assume that our concepts are in some way real or valid, or that they know something. But if you really get a bit philosophical for a moment, we don't know if our concepts are valid, so everything is apparent. Everything remains apparent. The story that seems real and normal and stable and solid, etc., is tentative at best. A tentative process that may or may not be happening. Okay, almost at work. Gotta put the game face on. Gotta get my head in the right place. Gotta admit, not really feeling like work today. But gotta do it. Apparently. Thanks for listening. Comments, as usual, are very welcome.